So we're going to talk a little bit about strategy and its, how it's done, if you will, within corporate America, and some challenges that we see from the implementation side. So one thing is, well, it's very fundamental at its core. The reasons why is it helps you understand your company, but also the industry that you're in. So you're not functioning in a silo, and allows you to grow and change and improve your business in the world that we live in. So there's a way that it's done. So you start with a vision and a mission, and then you do your goals and objectives. And when you understand your company, it allows you to have a clear vision into how you participate in the industry as a whole. And it also lets you determine what your risks are, how you're going to mitigate them, as well as how to mitigate the competition that you have from other companies within your industry. So if you're able to do this, you can design your company's operations in a way that will help you achieve a better performance and productivity, and ultimately a better profit immediately and in a longer-term format. So we live in a changing world, and that's probably a gross understatement. So there is a concept, VUCA, volatile, and ever-changing. And so I want to give you an analogy to help kind of put this into perspective. So about 2 years ago, which would have been in 2015, I was in a presentation, and we were talking about this VUCA concept and the amount of changes that our world is subject to. And the presenter made a very interesting comment, and it's since seen it validated in several places, and that is that if you take all the inventions in time up to the year 2000, they are dwarfed in comparison from the inventions from 2000 until 2015. So if you think about that, the amount of change in a 15-year period dwarfs all the changes in time up to the year 2000. That's a huge statement. And if you think about that and the amount of change that is subjugated to an individual as well as a company in that period of time, it really makes you have an appreciation for that feeling of overwhelmed that you get from time to time, and it's because you just have that immense amount of change coming at you. And companies are no different. They have all of that change coming towards them. So they must adapt in order to be able to function within their industry. So if you take a look at that go on, how many of you think about when you got your first cell phone? I don't know about all of you, but mine was in a bag, and it was like a brick. It was extremely heavy. You had to tote it around. And you had 30 minutes of airtime on your plan, and you're like, oh, I'll never be on there for that long. And now you're thinking, I burned 30 minutes before lunch. So it's a huge change, and the change is faster and faster every year. So if you think about this is another example here, that if you thought as a horsewhip maker that the invention of the automobile wasn't going to impact your business, if you look at it today, there's almost no horsewhip makers left. There's maybe one or two, and they are very small niche businesses, whereas previously they were almost on every corner in every town because there were that many people that had horses that they were using for transportation. So very distinct ways people need to look at not only what they're doing now, but what trends are there and how things are changing. When you do that, it allows you to have a vision and be able to see where your organization is going. And this is not just for the right now, but it's so that you can help determine what's your purpose and where's your destination, how are you getting there. to chart the path, if you will. That's what strategy is all about, is figuring out how you get there. This is where we want to be. The implementation side is the execution, where we'll talk about in just a moment. But you have to have an understanding of what's the purpose, what are the goals, what are the objectives that we're trying to meet. So there is a study that PMI has chartered, if you will, with The Economist. And this looked at strategic execution with whose responsibility it was to execute and how did that work. The majority of the respondents were strategic implementers, strategy professionals, and also C-suite individuals themselves. So we're going to look at what some of that feedback said and how we can work on it. Did I just do that twice? So one thing is, if we look at what did the executive say about strategy, the essential thing is that there was consensus across everyone that was asked that they don't implement strategy very well within their company. So if you look at where their challenge is, almost 90% of them say that implementing strategy is one of the most important things that they do, but only 56% of them say that they have been successful at it. So just over half think that they are able to succeed, but 90% of them almost say it's extremely important. So that's a huge gap in performance between it is something that is essential or very important to their line of business or their business overall, but yet only a little over half of those folks are able to see a successful implementation. So if you look at that, does that mean that their strategy is bad or their implementation is bad? There's probably a little bit of both, and we're going to have some conversation about what that looks like moving forward. But a lot of that has to do with alignment. So you have to be able to make sure that you can actually achieve the strategy that you plan. So some of the challenges when you look at why do they say only a little bit more than half of strategies that are developed become successful. And when you look at that, those respondents say that the C-suite people who developed this strategy, they went off and did their strategic plan, and all of a sudden, the time comes to implement, and these guys are nowhere to be found. So for you guys that are on the call, you have a chat window, and I'm going to start asking you some questions, and it would be fabulous if you could type in for me some answers. So one of the things I want to ask you about is, in your company, where you work right now, when the strategic development comes down and these are the strategic goals for the upcoming years, how many times do you go to implement those and can't find a sponsor or can't find a sponsor to be engaged? % for the time. So a large percentage of the time, your sponsor, the person who dreamed this idea up, they're nowhere to be found, or they're not engaged when you need them to be. So when it happens, you have a lag in decision making. You have lots of risks that can't get mitigated, issues that can't be resolved. All of those things decrease your ability to successfully implement. So when you look at oversight that you need in order to be able to succeed, you've got to have that sponsor there. Having that sponsor gives you a right-of-way or a path, if you will, to be able to get